She thought it was just a party. He thought it was just another break between classes. But one look in the noise, one coffee after, one confession by the river, changed everything. From a loud party to a quiet, yes. A story about love that arrives unexpectedly and stays forever.
Love Stories Max. Welcome to my channel. Enjoy watching, friends.
Where the noise fell silent. I wasn't planning on falling in love that night. I was just going to a party. A loud one. A packed rooftop apartment in an old building. Music pounding in my chest. Lights flickering, glasses clinking. People laughing too loudly. Others dancing like tomorrow didn't exist. The air smelled like perfume, wine, and a summer that refused to end. I was standing by the window with a glass of sparkling wine, watching the city glow below, when I felt it, a look. Not sharp, not intrusive, warm, as if someone wasn't looking at my dress or my movements, but a little deeper. I turned around. He was standing slightly apart from the crowd, a soft smile on his face, wearing a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled up. William. I didn't know his name yet, but somehow it already suited him. Calm, steady, real. You look like this place feels a little too loud for you, he said as he stepped closer. His voice was quieter than the music, but it was the one I heard. And you look like you know how to escape, I smiled back. He laughed, not loudly, honestly, and held out his hand. We stepped out onto the balcony. It was cooler there, calmer, the city breathing beneath us in thousands of lights. William placed his jacket over my shoulders without asking. He'd noticed me rub my hands together. Cameron, I said when he asked my name. That's beautiful, he replied, as if tasting every syllable. We talked about small things. About music we secretly love but rarely play. About childhood dreams. About how scary it can be to be yourself in the middle of all that noise. He listened closely, never interrupting, never rushing to respond, as if every word I said mattered. I noticed how he remembered the details. That I don't like overly sweet wine. That I laugh when I'm nervous. That I always look people in the eyes when I tell the truth. When we went back inside, the party felt different. Or maybe I was different. He danced with me slowly, his hand at my waist like the world could wait. And for one brief moment, just one, I rested my forehead against his. Not because I wanted closeness, but because with him, everything felt quiet. Even in the middle of the noise. Later, when people started leaving, he walked me to my taxi. Saved my number in his phone and made sure I got home safely. Not out of obligation, out of care. That night, I fell asleep smiling. Not because of love, but because something had begun. And now, when I think back to that loud party, I realize, sometimes, to find the person who makes the world feel warm and quiet, you don't have to run from the noise. You just have to meet the right gaze within it. And William became that gaze for me. We didn't wait long after that party. William texted me the next morning. Nothing dramatic, nothing mysterious. Just, I keep thinking about that balcony. Want to continue the conversation over coffee? I smiled before I even replied. We met at a small cafe with big windows. He arrived early, nervously turning a paper cup in his hands like a student before an important exam. It was unexpectedly sweet, especially knowing who he is at work. Yes, William is a school principal. And when he told me, I first pictured a strict man in a suit. But instead, he laughed and immediately started sharing stories. Last week, a first grader told me I look like a final boss, he said with a straight face. Then asked for my autograph. In his planner. I nearly choked on my coffee. Then came the second story. He was giving a serious motivational speech to the teachers when, through the school intercom, the bell system suddenly played. Baby Shark. And you know what? He said. They listened till the end, singing along. I laughed so hard I forgot where we were. When he asked about my job, I shrugged. I'm a sales associate at a jewelry store. It's quiet, beautiful, sparkly, and not very fun. My biggest work drama is when someone takes 40 minutes choosing a ring and then says, "I'll think about it," I joked. Or asks for a discount on diamonds. William looked at me like I'd said something important. But you touch stories, he said softly. People buy symbols of love from you. I'd never thought about it that way. We walked through the city until evening. He held my hand gently, not tightly, not to show off, just like he was afraid of scaring the moment away. When we stopped in front of my building, everything went quiet. May I? He asked, leaning in just slightly. I nodded. The first kiss was shy. Warm. A little awkward. Perfect. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding as loudly as that party once had. Only now, it was inside my chest. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking, this is the beginning. I can feel it, not loud, but real. And somewhere across the city, William was probably thinking that even a school principal can feel like a teenager again, when he falls in love for the very first time. Our next date felt completely different. Quieter. Closer. William invited me for an evening walk by the river. No plans, no reservations. Just warm sweaters, coffee to go, and slow steps side by side. He walked a little closer than before, his hand brushing mine now and then, like he was checking if I was still there. We talked about everything and nothing. About his school, where kids draw little hearts for him on the board. About me. How every ring in the jewelry store had started to look like a possible forever. And that's when the small crack appeared. His phone vibrated. A message. Then another. He glanced at the screen and smiled, quickly, casually. Someone from school? I asked, trying to sound light. A colleague, he replied easily. But something tightened in my chest. Silly. Unreasonable. Real. We grew quiet. The river flowed calmly, while inside me everything rushed. I suddenly felt afraid that maybe I was just a pleasant evening for him. A pause between his real life. William stopped walking first. Cameron, he said softly. You're far away right now. I took a breath and told him the truth. About the jealousy, the fear, about how I cared, and how that scared me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he took my hands in his, gentle, steady. "I'm a school principal," he said with a small smile. "But with you, I'm just a man who's afraid of losing a woman who became important to him faster than he ever expected." I looked up at him. "I'm falling in love with you, Cameron," he said simply. No grand speech. I wanted to say it the right way. But I don't think a perfect moment exists. My voice trembled when I whispered, "I am too." He pulled me into his arms. No rush. Just warmth, breath, and a silence that said more than words ever could. This kiss was different, deeper, more certain, yet just as tender. That night, as I fell asleep, I thought about how small crises don't always come to break us. Sometimes they come to show us how important honesty really is. And William, he was no longer just a man from a loud party. He was slowly becoming my home. That morning, I thought it would be an ordinary day. I arrived at the jewelry store early, cleaned the displays, arranged the rings I always handled with extra care. Wedding bands had their own shelf. I touched them every day, never imagining that my story would begin right there. It was around 11, a quiet hour, soft light, the gentle chime of the door. I looked up, and froze. William, in his coat, slightly nervous, like a student skipping class. His eyes were bright, his breathing faster than usual. "Aren't you supposed to be at school?" I whispered, stepping from behind the counter. "Break time," he smiled. "The most important one of my life." He walked toward the wedding rings display. Instinctively, I began my usual explanation: metal, stones, meaning. Then I stopped, because he wasn't looking at the rings. He was looking at me. "Cameron," he said softly, "I'm not here as a school principal. And not as a customer. I'm here as a man who found his home." He asked for a simple ring. Classic, light, the kind I would have chosen myself. When I placed it on the velvet cushion, he took it, and suddenly went down on one knee. The world disappeared. All I could hear was my own heart. "I teach children to be brave every day," William said. "And you taught me that without saying a word. Cameron, will you marry me?" My hands were shaking. My eyes filled with tears. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes. Of course, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger. It was warm, from his hands. He kissed me right there, among glass cases and quiet sparkle, in the middle of my ordinary life that suddenly became a miracle. Later, I learned the whole school waited longer than usual for him to return. But sometimes the most important lessons aren't taught in classrooms. That night, I looked at my hand and thought, I used to sell symbols of love. Now I was wearing my own. Our wedding wasn't loud. It was real. A small outdoor ceremony by the same river where William once told me he was falling in love with me. Soft sky, fresh flowers, wooden chairs, and people who knew us not just as a couple, but as two individuals who found each other. I walked toward him slowly. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to remember every step. William stood there smiling the way he only does when happiness feels tangible. His hands trembled slightly when he took mine. A school principal, my husband, my quiet. As we exchanged rings, he whispered, "You're my home." And I knew, forever had just begun. Later, we danced under warm string lights. His students made us cards with crooked hearts and notes that said "Love wins." My coworkers from the jewelry store cried harder than I did. And I looked at William, thinking how everything once started with a loud party and one quiet gaze. A year later, our mornings are simple. Coffee in the kitchen, his jacket over a chair, my wedding band, always warm. William leaves early for work. He's still a school principal, but now the kids ask, "Is your wife bringing cookies again?" Sometimes I stop by the school after work. My jewelry store feels different now. I see more smiles, because I finally understand what love really is. In the evenings, we walk, sit in silence, laugh, argue over small things. Life isn't always easy. Sometimes it's exhausting, but it's ours. Before falling asleep, William wraps his arms around me and says, "You know, I'd live this life all over again, as long as you're in it." I fall asleep with the same thought I had a year ago. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly and stays forever.